All right, welcome everybody to Artful Tuesdays. Today we're going to be doing a reading of William Wordsworth's poem Ode, Intimations of Immortality, from Recollections of Early Childhood. Now, Wordsworth is a poet you may be a little familiar with, but probably not unless you read a lot of poetry. He is a famous poem. He's written poems like Daffodils, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. And if you were at ARCUK, if you've watched any of the Lisa Van Dam poems or poetry readings that she has done at ARCUK, she's done some of his Dorothy poems, it's Dorothy poems. So his Lucy poems. He's done some of his Lucy poems. Dorothy was his sister, Wordsworth's sister. So he's a famous poet. He was, I would say, next to Shakespeare, he's actually probably one of the most influential poets in English literature. If not, he just literature, like he's super influential in literature as such, as well as the broader arts. He was a major figure in in the 19th century romantic movement. Now, we're not going to be talking about William Wordsworth's life. We're not going to be talking. I want to just do a reading for some of you, and if there's any questions, we could talk about those specifically. But this is a slightly longer poem. It's not super long. It's not like 30 minutes. I think it's probably 10, 12 minutes to read, and I'm going to try to read it slowly. But here's my goal, and let me just kind of set up that I think this is an important theme that Wordsworth is dealing with, that even if you're not, if this is your first attempt at him and you're lost on a lot of times, that's fine. What I'm really hoping you'll get from this is, one, try to give yourself into the beauty of the words and the sounds and the rhythms and what he's doing. And I really, really, really encourage you to come back to this. So Wordsworth was a bit of a philosophical poet in a sense. And so there's a lot of deep thoughts that he has. There's a lot of interesting things that I don't always agree with a lot of what he's saying, because he's in an interesting era. He's influenced by Rousseau, and he's not in Ayn Rand's favorite camp of intellectuals. He's influenced by a philosopher at the time, Godwin, who had some very weird thoughts and ideas sometimes about how we develop as humans. But he's trying to do something. And of course, there's the beauty of his language and what he's doing. And he's still trying to get at something deep. And this poem is one of those poems that he has. And the poem, I'll just say, has the theme, which is in the title of Recollections of Early Childhood. And just to kind of set up for you what's happening. And thank you, Roberts. Robert Nasser. Let me read this. So we have a super chat from Robert. Reflections like this ode remind me of the many ways I can come closest to immortality, e.g., living fully, reflectively, passionately each moment. Yeah, and that's an interesting perspective on this poem. I take it you've read it. Part of what he's talking about, though, is a loss that we have from childhood. That, again, like the Rousseauians, like the romantics of his time, there's a dominant view, of the noble savage and the noble child that is essentially ruined by worldliness. And there were ideas of even Godwin was one of these ideas that we should actually put babies. This is an actual idea, a theoretical idea he wanted to practice, but luckily nobody let him. But he wanted to put like a baby in like a dark room and give it certain sensory things, like a dash of green, a picture of a flower, very slowly, like touch its palm, from day one, like have like a checklist of what you're going to do. And like to kind of develop it because he believed that there was like a perfect, untouched type of, human that you could develop in a sense. And, Frankenstein's monster, I think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein monster is almost a reflection out of that kind of idea of, trying to create the perfect man. And there's a lot of that going on, but the dominant view was that childhood was this kind of magical moment, something that I think is still prevalent today. And I think has actually almost resurged a little bit today's in the last 50, 60, 70 years since maybe World War II is this idea that childhood is amazing. Childhood is amazing. It's the best time of human existence. And then maturity is a kind of burden, a boring, it sucks. It's, something to endure for the sake of children almost. And that I think is a bit of a problem. And, I love childhood, but I think that philosophically is a problem. Nevertheless, one of the things I recommend for any thinker is that you shouldn't, you really need to understand these ideas. So if you're at all interested in the history of ideas, you could read Rousseau, you could read Godwin, you could read the romantic philosophers of the 18th and 19th century, but you're going to have a hard time really understanding them. And the poets, the writers, the fiction writers, they will help, and the artists help to concretize, to bring some of those ideas out. So even if you disagree with some of them, they're very worth studying, not just reading, but really studying. And that's my recommendation. Now, this poem that I'm going to read today is a beautiful poem. It's one of his more famous ones. So, regardless of what I just said there, oh, by the way, so Apollo, Zeus, the daffodils was drummed into my mind in school as a kid. I hope that's a good thing because I love that poem. I hope but I think this is one of the problems is the way that these poems are taught today and why people hate poetry so much, or at least dislike it intensely, is because it's drummed into you versus like it should come out of your own joys and like a good teacher would help you enjoy it versus drumming it into your head. All right. So, this is a poem that I think has a lot of beauty in it. There's a kind of progression where there's, each of the stanzas has their own kind of unique thing to say about either childhood or maturity, or the relationship between maturing and childhood, and how he sees the magic of childhood dissipating, but then you're recompensed with stuff. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to analyze this deeply. That'll depend on you guys, the audience, but I do hope you'll stick around for the reading, which I'm going to start right now. So one thing, and before I start this, I do have to say one thing I love about Wordsworth, and there's so much to love about him because again, he's kind of a philosophical poet. He's an epistemological poet. He's a thinker. He's a really important influencer in the world, the broader romantic movement in art in the 19th century. Even the musicians and the painters and the sculptors considered Wordsworth, the priest of the movement. He was one of the top priests, and there's a reason for this. And this poem is one of those reasons, by the way. So this will really help you understand the movement. But one thing I love about him is his egotism. So John Keats called his work the egotistical sublime. And, just broadly, you could see an egotism here that I love. And he's in the very beginning, his kind of quote at the beginning before he starts the poem itself, he's actually quoting himself from another poem, a poem called My Heart Leaps Up. And the quote that he has is, "The child is father of the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety." Now, before we start, I really want you to think about that statement. I think he has some really good one-liners like that, a lot of them. The child is father of the man. It sounds like nonsense, but when you think about it, and you try to just listen, like try to understand what he's saying, there is something there. Now, whether it's 100% true, I don't, it's obviously not literally true, but remember, he's a poet. So it's not going to be literally true. It's going to be metaphorically true. Or at least it's trying to be. And so I don't want to tell you what I think it is. I'll tell you later if you stick around and ask. But the child is father of the man. What do you think that means? The child is father of the man. And I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a reading. I'm not going to stop. So if you have questions, go for it, ask them, and then I'll answer afterwards. I hope you stick around for the whole reading. And I hope even if you don't understand it, you don't like it at first, whatever, this is one of those poems I really think you should read a couple of times, really give it a chance. But it's something you got to work on a little bit. So give it a chance, go through it, and try it for yourself. Okay, so here we go. Ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood by William Wordsworth. There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream. It is not now as it hath been of yore, turn wheresoever I may, by night or day. The things which I have seen, I now can see no more. The rainbow comes and goes, and lovely is the rose. The moon doth with delight look round her when the heavens are bare. Waters on a starry night are beautiful and fair. The sunshine is a glorious birth, but yet I know, wherever I go, that there hath passed away a glory from the earth. Now, while the birds thus sing a joyous song, and while the young lambs bound as to the tabor's sound, to me alone there came a thought of grief. A timely utterance gave that thought relief, and I again am strong. The cataracts blow their trumpets from the steep. No more shall grief of mine the season wrong. I hear the echoes through the mountains throng. The winds come to me from the fields of sleep, and all the earth is gay. Land and sea give themselves up to jollity, and with the heart of May doth every beast keep holiday. Thou child of joy, shout round with me. Let me hear thy shouts, thou happy shepherd boy. Ye blessed creatures, I have heard the call ye to each other make. I see the heavens laugh with you in your jubilee. My heart is at your festival. My head hath its coronal. The fullness of your bliss I feel. I feel it all. Oh, evil day, if I were sullen while earth herself is adorning this sweet May morning, and the children are culling on every side, in 1,000 valleys far and wide, fresh flowers, while the sun shines warm, and the babe leaps up on his mother's arm. I hear, with joy I hear. But there's a tree of many one, a single field which I have looked upon. Both of them speak of something that is gone. The pansy at my feet doth the same tale repeat. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy. But he beholds the light, and whence it flows, he sees it in his joy. The youth, who daily farther from the east must travel, still is nature's priest, and by the vision splendid is on his way attended. At length the man perceives it die away and fade into the light of common day. Earth fills her lap with pleasures of her own. Yearnings she hath in her own natural kind, and even with something of a mother's mind and no unworthy aim, the homely nurse doth all she can to make her foster child, her inmate man, forget the glories he hath known, and that imperial palace whence he came. Behold the child among his newborn blisses, a 6 years darling of a pygmy size. See, where mid-work of his own hand he lies, fretted by sallies of his mother's kisses, with light upon him from his father's eyes. See, at his feet, some little plan or chart, some fragment from his dream of human life, shaped by himself with newly learned art. A wedding or a festival, a mourning or a funeral. And this hath now his heart. And unto this he frames his song. Then will he fit his tongue to dialogues of business, love, or strife. But it will not be long ere this be thrown aside, and with new joy and pride the little actor cons another part, filling from time to time his humorous stage with all the persons down to palsied age that life brings with her in her equipage, as if his whole vocation were endless imitation. Thou, whose exterior semblance doth belie thy soul's immensity, thou best philosopher, who yet dost keep thy heritage, thou eye among the blind, that, deaf and silent, reads the eternal deep, haunted forever by the eternal mind. Mighty prophet, seer blessed, on whom those truths do rest, which we are toiling all our lives to find, in darkness lost, the darkness of the grave. Thou, over whom thy immortality broods like the day, a master or a slave, a presence which is not to be put by. Thou little child, yet glorious in the might of heaven-born freedom on thy being's height. Why, with such earnest pains dost thou provoke the years to bring the inevitable yoke, thus blindly with thy blessedness at strife? Full soon thy soul shall have her earthly freight, and custom lie upon thee with a weight heavy as frost, and deep almost as if life. O joy, that in our embers is something that doth live, that nature yet remembers what was so fugitive. The thought of our past years in me doth breed perpetual benediction. Not indeed for that which is most worthy to be blessed, delight and liberty, the simple creed of childhood, whether busy or at rest, with new-fledged hope still fluttering in his breast. Not for these I raise the song of thanks and praise, but for those obstinate questionings of sense and outward things falling from us, vanishings, blank misgivings of a creature moving about in worlds not realized, high instincts before which our mortal nature did tremble like a guilty thing surprised. But for those first affections, those shadowy recollections, which, be they what they may, are yet the fountain light of all our day, are yet a master light of all our seeing, uphold us, cherish, and have power to make our noisy years seem moments in the being of the eternal silence. Truths that wake to perish never, which neither listlessness nor mad endeavor, nor man nor boy, nor all that is at enmity with joy, can utterly abolish or destroy. Hence, in a season of calm weather, though inland far we be, our souls have sight of that immortal sea which brought us hither, can in a moment travel thither, and see the children sport upon the shore, and hear the mighty waters rolling evermore. Then sing, ye birds, sing, sing a joyous song, and let the young lambs bound as to the tabor's sound. We in thought will join your throng, ye that pipe and ye that play, ye that through your hearts today feel the gladness of the May. What though the radiance which was once so bright be now forever taken from my sight. Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower. We will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind, in the primal sympathy which having been must ever be, in the soothing thoughts that spring out of human suffering, and the faith that looks through death, and years that bring the philosophic mind. And oh, ye fountains, meadows, hills, and groves, forebode not any severing of our loves. Yet in my heart of hearts I feel your might. I only have relinquished one delight, to live beneath your more habitual sway. I love the brooks which down their channels fret, even more than when I tripped lightly as they. The innocent brightness of a newborn day is lovely yet. The clouds that gather round the setting sun do take a sober coloring from an eye that hath kept watch o'er man's mortality. Another race hath been, and other palms are won. Thanks to the human heart by which we live, thanks to its tenderness, its joys, and fears. To me, the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. All right. I was just reading Apollo Zeus. You'd expect a Britisher to know more about Wordsworth. So I take it Apollo Zeus is from England. And yes, you would assume that, although I don't think that most Americans know, even 70% of the American writers, like how many people have even read Herman Melville here, who is a very important American writer. But so that's okay. But now's your chance. I hope you listened to that and you got some enjoyment from it. So I don't see too many questions. I'll just tell you so like I said, I hope that you give it a shot again and either listen. I would recommend getting this. You can, get this poem for free online. Just Google the title and reading it for yourself, but just trying to get some understanding of what he's explaining and enjoying the sounds. But I'll just say that the child is father to the man of them. What does that mean? Well, I think in his poem and in his philosophy, in Wordsworth's philosophy, to put it in his terms, he basically sees, and he has some phrases to this effect. Where's the famous one? Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. Our birth. So this is not a poet just trying to be a poet and trying to be poetical, although that's part of it. But this is, he's saying that we were awake before we were born. And then being born is an awakening. I mean, sorry, it's a sleep until we return, after death. So in other words, I think Plato had this view. Christians definitely have this view, but there's this view. And if you're ever curious about its manifestations, this is it. This is one of it. There's this view that, we were alive, in God's eye or somewhere in this celestial empire. He has another term for it, the imperial palace, which is heaven, where we come. And there's the Romantics had this view that you were born and there was almost like a progression away from God. So like the baby was closest to God. The 1-year-old was 1 year away from God, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. And the younger the child, the more close to God they were. So, the 7-year-old or 5 or 6-year-old, he talks about a 6-year-old in here at some point, a 6 years darling of a pygmy size, behold the child among his newborn blisses. So, there's this view of the blisses that they have, a 6 years darling of a pygmy size. So it's, pygmy kind of like a mini human. See where mid work of his own hand he lies, fretted by sallies of his mother's kisses. So part of the poetic beauty in this sense is the just a picture, just an image of a child and being loved by a parent, and a parent. Now, he obviously takes this to a religious zealot extent. Like, he keeps going with this. But what I'm trying to stress is the beauty that can be attained by these artists, even if you don't agree with all of them. And I think this stanza is a good one. I mean, all of them are very good. And he's saying, see where mid-work of his own hand he lies, fretted by sallies of his, so fret like by sallies, like being attacked by his mother's kisses, which is obviously not attacked from an adult standpoint, but from the boy who's trying to play, because he's mid-work of his own hand, right? He's working with light upon him from his father's eye, and he has, something from his father's eye, see at his feet some little plan or chart. So you could see like a little drawing from a child. That's what Wordsworth is talking about. Some fragment from his dream of human life, some scribbling from a child, but he's saying like there's some argument he's trying to make here on a grander scale, that this is like something maybe even from the imperial palace time, shaped by himself with newly learned art. So as the child is developing, and what is the child drawing or creating? A wedding or a festival, right? So these are the works of a child, right? A mourning or a funeral. And this hath now his heart, and unto this he frames the song. Then will he fit his tongue to dialogues of business, love, or strife. And this is kind of his imitations, right? This is how, if you've ever seen children imitating, sometimes they'll play office, sometimes they'll play, dress up, they'll play house, they'll play doctor, right? They'll play those kinds of things. They'll play soldier, right? That's what he's talking about here. And this is just, I think, a beautiful image of a child. Then he fit his tongues to dialogues of business, love, or strife. But it will not be long ere this be thrown aside, right? Because children, they'll play, they'll play soldier for 10 minutes and then get bored. They want to play lava, right? And they'll jump on the couch and all that stuff, right? But it will not be long ere this be thrown aside, and with new joy and pride, the little actor, right? So he's playing on a theme throughout this whole thing of the child is almost like an actor playing at adult things. Cons another part, filled from time to time his humorous stage. I think there's something. So I haven't looked up the word humorous in a while. I don't know if he means just the comedy stage or if there's a medical term, because I think there's a medical term there, but I'd have to Google this. So always have your dictionary out when you're reading poetry. With all the persons down to palsied age that life brings with her in her equipage. And then here's the finale of this stanza, as if his whole vocation were endless imitation. And that, is an Aristotelian view too. This the idea that, and is another view of child. So it's not just that child are born in heaven, they go to sleep when they're born on earth, and they're getting separated from God. That's part of it. But he's also, just as a poet and an observer of reality, he's kind of grappling with these two ideas of his love of children and this idea that there's a celestial nature to them that he takes somewhat literal in this recollections from. And I'm not going to go through it. That's the rest. I don't have any questions, so I'm going to end it here. But what I wanted to say is that in this whole poem and in a lot of Wordsworth's work, you get that kind of sense of the loss from the past, especially, from youth and childhood, that's something that he's grappling with. But what you're given, the term he uses is recompensed with, is the philosophic mind, which is kind of his term for maturity. And you could see him here behind me. If you're watching on YouTube, that's Wordsworth. And, he's often thought of as this brooding, quiet, thoughtful individual. But he also revered childhood. Like, he really loved childhood. He thought it was a magic moment, but he thought that it was, something that we lost. So that's the poem. There's a lot to talk about here. I appreciate you guys sticking around and listening with me. Hopefully you share this. Next week, by the way, we're going to be doing The Miracle Worker, poem The Miracle Worker, with Shoshana Milgram. So stick around for that. Next week, same time, 4 p.m. That'll be live. So if you get a chance, watch the movie, the I think 1950s version. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the director, but just Google Miracle Worker 1950s. Go watch that or read the play. So thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you next time.